The Christmas present the president promised as Republicans prepare to end the year united on tax reform.
We have a tremendous spirit for the tax reform. This is going to be one of the great gifts to the middle-income people of this country. We are back. We're really going to start to rock.
President Trump set to unveil his national security strategy, including a reportedly much tougher stance on China.
China has been a competitor to the United States for a long time. It's time for us to treat them like that.
One Democrat representative, Jackie Spire, says, based on rumors, Trump's going to fire Bob Mueller.
I believe that the president wants all of this shut down. He wants to shut down these investigations.
A top lawyer at the White House saying Mueller will not be fired. The president's transition team now accusing Robert Mueller's team of improperly obtaining documents.
A fix was in against Donald Trump from the beginning, and they were pro-Hillary.
President Trump won in spite of the Republican establishment being against him, the Democrats being against him. Still, he prevailed. To me, that's the real story here.
It's fun. It's happy.
Got a beat, you can dance.
No.
I wish they would do more Christmas music. We don't get to
You're
do
right.
that one
It
more
is
time a
December
year.
17th, which means we are 1 week away from Santa
Right.
arriving at your house while you were asleep.
Yeah,
He
I mean,
speaks
some people
sway
are playing
into the
holiday
chimney.
music already. They're doing the Christmas spirit.
It's not holiday
the
music, Ed.
You can say,
Christmas
just
music.
because you say holiday doesn't mean you're not saying Christmas.
Right,
Of course
and
it is.
people complain about Ed taking Christmas. It's a war on Christmas.
I've launched a war on Christmas now. I've also launched a
Just an
war on
accessory.
breakfast,
Yes,
according
Of
to
course.
Yeah.
So I commented this morning because Ed's like, "Where's my oatmeal?"
I didn't
like,
say it
it's
like
him,
that.
And I was like, "Ed, is
Grandpa
my grandpa
Ed."
here?" And we've asked you for your emails because I don't know. I feel like oatmeal. I like oatmeal. I respect oatmeal, but I feel like it's a little bit like yesterday.
You're
right?
anti-oatmeal.
Yeah, I like
Yeah, well,
cereal, I
everybody's
like
on a
eggs, I like
carb
bacon,
thing,
I like.
so he likes his eggs, his bacon. That's a Midwestern thing, too. Eggs,
It's true. I
bacon.
should like it. It's true.
Yeah.
But so we've asked all of you to email us. How do you feel about oatmeal? Is it 21st century or 20th century? And you guys have been pouring in with your comments, and rightfully so. Larry says this: oatmeal every day keeps the doctor away.
Instead of
That's right. And
an
Joel
apple.
says oatmeal, okay, biscuits, sausage, and gravy. Much more tasty with 2 eggs. I agree with that.
Ed,
I
comments
agree.
on that, honestly.
Michael Corwin tweeted me before. I don't know who he is. I always order oatmeal at 4 a.m. when I'm in jail. Just kidding. He said, just kidding. You can't place a breakfast order there. Not that I know of. And a smiley face. So I don't know what Michael's done or not done.
These are the fans
It's like in
that
prison.
Ed
It's like,
has.
here you
These
go.
are the
Here's your
fans I have.
for the day.
Big week, though. This FBI and the investigative narrative has shifted in the last week big time, with all of a sudden the spotlight on the investigator.
That's right. So the last week we've learned, not just the last week, but the last couple of weeks, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Andrew Weissman, Bruce Orr, all these names that you didn't know before, and now you know them as top officials at FBI or DOJ, who seem to have political connections to the Clintons. More than seem. We'll see where the evidence leads. Well, some of them will be testifying this week behind closed doors, but at least testifying to what they may or may not have known or done as part of those investigations with their connections to the Clintons. So Bruce Orr will be testifying before the Senate Intel Committee behind closed doors, as well as Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe to the House Intel Committee behind closed
And
doors.
real quick, Bruce Orr obviously was somebody, a senior official at Justice Department, gets sidelined and demoted in the last week because he didn't tell his colleagues at Justice that he had these ties to Fusion GPS personally, and that his wife was being paid by that firm that was putting together the dirty dossier.
And Andrew McCabe mentioned in some of the emails that or text messages that we saw, I think up until this last week, the focus has been on, these people were Trump haters and they were Hillary supporters. I think what's interesting now and what I think has really changed and made this much more significant is the fact that these emails speak to an insurance policy. They mention Andrew McCabe in these
Deputy Director at the
Deputy
FBI.
Director at the FBI. They mention him. They talk about an insurance policy or a plan, if you will, in case their hope that Hillary wins doesn't come true. I think what we have here is potentially one of the biggest scandals in American history, where we're seeing, our justice system being used to really change the outcome of an election.
Rachel, you're zeroing in on the right thing. It's one thing to have a political opinion, which we all have.
We
and
all
you can
have that,
that
and
when
I
you're
don't
in the
think people
FBI
were
DOJ.
scandalized by that.
I don't call him Andrew McCabe anymore. I call him Andy. because that's how he's referred to in the text messages. And you're talking about it when Peter Strzok is emailing his girlfriend about what the insurance policy might be if Trump gets elected. He's alluding to potentially all the dirt they may have on Russia and the connections and what they could do with it. And when you look at Andrew McCabe and Andrew Weissman, so many connections to the Clintons and Clinton monies and Clinton support, you can't help but wonder how deep could this go.
And
so
what
these
did we learn
questions need
before,
to be
by the way?
asked.
Andrew McCabe's wife ran for office in Virginia as a Democrat, of course, in 2015, got hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign money, not personal money, from a PAC associated with Terry McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia, and also a Clinton pal. And Congressman Jim Jordan was on with Justice with Judge Jeanine last night and said, there's a lot more coming. Watch.
You talked about Bruce Orr meeting with the founder of Fusion GPS, Glenn Simpson, after the election.
Right.
And you think, why would they meet after the election? Maybe it was to get their story straight. Maybe it was to look at ways to cover up their track. But it also could be, how are we going to double down and go after now President-elect Trump? Thinking about what Chuck Schumer said. So if that, maybe it was both. Maybe they're looking, how can we cover up because our person didn't win the White House? Now what can we also do to go after the now President-elect Donald Trump? Think about when all the unmasking, when all the leaks took place, during the transition time. This is scary. And now this comes out about what Mueller was doing with the transition team.
So Jim Jordan has been, and Trey Gowdy have both been cautious initially about indicting the investigation here and Bob Mueller. But they've done a 180 and they've seen more evidence. And Bruce Orr is a huge part of this, as he referred to. This is a guy, you mentioned it. His wife works for Fusion GPS. She's the Russian expert there. Fusion GPS put together the dossier.
Why did
working
Fusion
with the
GPS
agent.
have a Russia expert anyway?
And
Well, of course they have a Russian expert because they're looking at Donald
And
Trump.
by the way, when asked if they paid for the dossier, the U.S. government, the FBI, the DOJ, no one will answer that question.
Answer it.
Correct.
So
That's
you gotta follow
That sounds very fishy
It's a great
to me.
point. So if you have connections to the highest level of the FBI and you have a dossier, you could conceive of starting to build a case against a president-elect, which is what so many people are thinking about. So I've talked to some folks behind the scenes. They say Bruce Orr and those connections, because he met with Fusion GPS not just before the election, but after the election. Why?
Yeah.
They say there's a lot of dots there potentially to be connected that could look really, really bad.
You're talking to people behind, like a journalist now?
No,
Yeah.
I don't reveal my sources.
Oh, okay, all right.
These are
Anonymous.
anonymous
Okay. All
sources
right, all right.
that shall be named later.
While all this is swirling around, what's the president doing? Well, there's a report out that in 2018, he's going to have kind of a new approach, at least in one respect, and he's going to get out on the road a lot more. I've heard this from a lot of his supporters previous to this report, that they feel like he's been pinned down in the White House too much. I can tell you, having covered several presidents, every Democratic and Republican president I think I've covered, after 6 months, a year in office, they all say the same thing. They're cooped up, they're on defense, they're locked inside, the gate's there at the White House, and when they get out there, and you see this with the president, whenever he has a rally, he feeds off the crowd. He seems more energetic. He seems like he's in his element, as opposed to sitting at the White House waiting to see what's the New York Times or the Washington Post going to say to attack me today.
Well, you're in a bubble, too. I mean, part of President Trump's appeal has been he's always had his pulse on the American people. And I think when he goes out there, and if he's smart, I think he'd go not only to places that supported him, but also make sure he goes to those states where there are Democrats that have won in Trump areas.
Sure.
That will be good for him.
Some advantages. So a couple of candidates he's reported to go stump for are Josh Hawley. He's running for the Missouri State Senate seat, as well as Rick Scott in Florida.
The governor who may run for Senate.
Revived again. And in looks like in Maine, a rumored Senate candidate, Paul LePage. I mean, the reality is, look 2 weeks ago, they say no big legislative accomplishments. Look at how he's under siege on Russia. The whole narrative has turned. There is no Russian collusion. We see the collusion is instead with Hillary Clinton and these other agencies potentially. And then he's about to pass one of the most historic tax reforms in American history.
Yep.
Why would you? I mean, the fact that these candidates want the president says what you would need to know about his electoral efforts.
Wait, are you hearing
He will
that
help.
right now?
What?
I don't. Is that alien life or something? What is that?
Is someone breaking into our broadcast?
Yeah, someone. I don't. Wait. Well,
just
the
wanna cut me
Pentagon's
off,
been
yeah.
investigating this. $22 million of your money to study alien visits. And guess who? And when pressed about this, New York Times revealed this yesterday and said $22 million a year was being spent on this. Harry Reid comes out and says, quote, "The truth is out there." Seriously.
Wow.
The guy's from Nevada, right? Where all the, UFO
Yeah,
stuff
he's also
happens.
a former boxer. I'm starting to think maybe he got hit a couple of times
Oh,
too many. That
wow.
just sounds kooky.
You
Anyway.
know what? Hold on. $22 million, as you guys know, drop in the bucket in the federal budget. It's a lot of money
It's
for
a
all
lot
of
of
us.
money.
It's a lot of money for all of us, but it's nothing. It's a rounding error in the federal budget.
How
Who
many
knows? What if
Bitcoins is
they're out there? I'm channeling Clayton Morris. What if they're out there? Should we not think about what would happen?
What we should
If
do
they
is let the American people know we're spending that money
Yeah.
because it was hidden in the budget.
What I want to say,
There's a lot
you
of
say it's only a small amount of money. I hear what you're saying in context of the budget, but the New York Times story says that it started in 2012 at Harry Reid's urging, and he was very powerful then. But we are still paying for it. My understanding is the program hasn't died. This is the problem with some programs in the federal government. Yes, there are some that work
Yeah,
great.
you're right.
There are some that help people. And then there are others that are just out there looking at aliens, and it never dies. They keep funding this year after year.
But I'm hearing from the aliens that the funding actually stopped in 2012.
You know what? This makes a lot of sense where you get a lot of your information. Sitting on the couch with you, now I get it.
Direct line
All right,
to the big man and to aliens. We'll see. Thank you.
While Pete listens to the aliens in his ears, we're going to turn now to your headlines. President Trump touting the Republicans' tax cut plan, calling it a great Christmas gift for the middle class.
If you look at the whole thing, everybody's going to benefit. But I think the greatest benefit is going to be for jobs and for the middle class.
The House is expected to vote on the final tax bill early next week. If it passes, it will then go to the Senate. Police in Australia arrest and charge a man with acting as an agent for North Korea. The South Korean-born Sydney man is charged with attempting to broker sales for tens of millions of dollars. The deals including components used in ballistic missiles. He's also charged with trying to generate income for the rogue nation from the sale of coal, which is on the UN sanctions list. The 59-year-old could face up to 10 years in prison. Over 300 passengers catching a nasty stomach virus on a Royal Caribbean cruise. That's over 100 more people than previously reported. The cruise now back in Florida after a 5-night horror of a journey through the Caribbean. Guests waiting for up to 4 hours on board just to see a doctor. Royal Caribbean says crews are deep cleaning the ship before heading back out to sea later this week. It's still unclear what caused the illness. Thanks to many of you, our viewers and volunteers throughout the country, more than 1 million fallen heroes will not be forgotten over this Christmas season. Wreaths across America laying 1.2 million wreaths at veteran grave sites in all 50 states today, or yesterday, I should say, including 245,000 at Arlington National Cemetery. The group telling us they received several donations after appearing on Fox and Friends last week.
That's awesome.
Those are your headlines.
It started out as a little thing, some 20 some odd years ago, and it just keeps growing and growing. Yeah. Honors our heroes.
You guys talking about patriotism in America? Well, there you got it. It's alive and well.
Well, you guys are awesome. You guys make it happen. Thank you for all the support of a great cause like that. Well, moving on, President Trump set to unveil his brand new national security strategy tomorrow, and he's expected to get tough on China. General Jack Keane on why this is such an important move for the president next.
You'll want to hear his insight. Plus, we all know the importance of sitting down to family dinner, but it turns out it can actually have real health benefits. We've got the science to prove it coming up.
Tomorrow, President Trump set to unveil his national security strategy. It reportedly includes a much tougher stance on China than past administrations. Here to weigh in, Fox News senior strategic analyst, retired four-star General Jack Keane joins us now. Before we get into the intricacies of this national security strategy, General, tell us what this strategy is meant to do and why it's important for this White House.
Well, first of all, national security strategy sets the tone for an entire administration in terms of how we're going to relate to the world. And the strategic framework for this strategy is the Trump administration is returning America to its leadership role as the indispensable nation that's promoting stability, security, and prosperity. That's the general framework, and we've seen it already in action where they're reassuring our allies that the United States is back, that we're going to partner with them, and they have a willingness to confront adversaries. And that's going to be a very important part of the strategy.
General, early reports say that this White House is going to take a much tougher stance on China. Now, critics have claimed that President Trump wasn't tough enough on China when he visited there. Take a listen to what they have said.
What do you think of the president's change of tune on China.
Clearly, he is trying to make himself very popular with President Xi by, Frank, I think, kind of overdoing the sycophancy of saying how wonderful he is and what a really good friend he is.
Is there a chance that he is kowtowing to the Chinese leader in small part because he's trying to get the big deal in North Korea?
I think to some extent that's what he's looking for. But frankly, that's now not how we're going to get Chinese cooperation, by kowtowing to them.
So, General, this is the early take from the intelligentsia, but reports we're getting is that they may even label China as not just a rival, but an adversary, a very strong stance.
Yeah, pretty much. Listen, our allies do have some concern that, you know, given the distraction of North Korea, the way they would express it, to us it's not a distraction. You know, that the president's had to woo the president of China, and they are a little concerned about that. But I'm not, because I think that's just the way the president goes about establishing relationships with other heads of state. Listen, this China is a big issue. This is the most important bilateral relationship of the 21st century between the United States and China. We got to try to get this thing right. And listen, China, when they look at the United States, they see us as a declining power. They see themselves as a rising power. President Xi has stated that in 20 years, China will replace the United States as the preeminent global power in the world. And we are on a collision course with them because they're revising the international order. They don't want to participate in it. They're trampling all over our ally sovereignty in the Pacific. To some degree, they've had success at doing that. And they are clearly on the move, and they are not operating certainly in the interest of our allies, and certainly not in the interest of the United States.
So, General, what you're saying is that this White House is recognizing reality, the ambitions of this Chinese regime. What do you anticipate will be the biggest step they will take in light of this strategy to try to stop that from happening?
Well, first of all, they've already begun that, and that is to reassure our allies that we're going to partner with them. China's strategy is brilliant. They want to have dominance in the Pacific and Eurasia without ever having to fire a shot. They operate in the gray zone. They grind down our allies' sovereignty with their air and maritime zones. They got 130,000 fishing vessels with military radios on them working for their Minister of Defense to challenge fishing rights in the region. Right. We have got to stand up with our allies, give our allies some spine and backbone, and push back on what they are doing there.
Well said.
And this administration is very clear-eyed about it.
General, unfortunately, we have to leave it right there. Thank you for your expertise. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Stick around.
Nice
More Fox and Friends on the other side.
Headlines: New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is not laughing at this picture of Democratic Governor-elect Phil Murphy. He's posing with a giant cutout of Christie on the beach. Christie says he's disappointed by it and the message it sends to the public. He came under fire last year, of course, for being at a beach that was closed during a government shutdown.
That was the bad message.
That might have been the bad message, yeah. A lot of people talking about this morning. Saturday Night Live cast member Pete Davidson showing off his new tattoo of his hero, Hillary Clinton. The comedian posting this new ink online to, shall we say, mixed reviews. Clinton responding, saying she's honored, while others maybe not so impressed.
Okay, now you've seen it before. Even TV families like The Sopranos knew the importance of having a family meal.
So, Ma, you going to come to the big game?
Game? What game?
Researchers are backing it up, saying there's real benefits to actually sitting down for family meals. A study in the Journal of Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics, that's a mouthful, found children are more active, have better mental health, and drink less soda if they have meals together as a family.
Our next guest is the author of Disconnected and agrees with the study. Psychotherapist Tom Kersting joins us along with his daughter, Ashlyn, and her friend, Elizabeth. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, everyone.
This book is so important because all of us are dealing with this new lifestyle that we have where we're all connected.
That's right. And, you know, as far as
the
family,
internet, to the
as far as the whole
phones.
family dinner thing, I actually have a chapter called Parenting from a Distance. What we're seeing now, statistically, the average parent only spends 3.5 minutes per week in meaningful conversation with their children.
Wow.
So we got to get back
to per week,
per
not
week,
per day?
per week. So we have to get back to the dinner table. If you can't get to the dinner table, I tell people, when I'm pulling into the high school in the morning, I see every kid's head down in the passenger seat. We have to, that's fertile ground for communicating with our kids.
But even a busy family can say, one night we're going to do this. Sunday night is family dinner. about drugs and alcohol.
It is. So here's what it comes down to. So our kids need us more than they need anybody as parents. And they need us to communicate with them, have conversations, develop an emotional connection, okay? So the benefits to that are that our children who spend regular communication time with their families at the dinner table are less likely to engage in early sexual activity, have better mental health, are overall happier, are much more likely to do better in school. So a tremendous amount of benefits to that. We have to get back to that.
All right, Ashlyn, tell us, so how often do you really have dinner with the family, and what does it mean to you?
We have dinner with the family a lot, and we don't go on we're not allowed to go on electronics. And I think anyone who is actually allowed to go on electronics during dinner is a very bad choice, because it's not good to it's not a good thing, because then dinner is the only time of the day that we get to spend time with our family and talk to them. And it's important because we don't have any electronics that one time of the day.
So what you're saying is, for me to have my phone out right now.
Right, you're not
listening to you.
You're not looking at people. I actually saw a study that said that babies are not getting as much interaction. That used to be when you nursed a baby, you were looking down at babies. And now what we're doing is we're doing this. And babies actually need that eye contact with their mom. I mean, it starts so young.
And another interesting component is when you look at kids as they're getting older now, what we're seeing in my profession as a therapist is a real lack in the ability to communicate and make eye contact.
Elizabeth,
and that's a learned thing.
Elizabeth, do you find it hard to put the phone down? And I've been chastised by my kids because they'll say, Dad, you're telling us to not use your phone, and then you're emailing work, right? Which is a
I
fair
get
point.
that too.
Do you have a hard time putting the phone down? Or?
No, I honestly think electronics at dinner is a bad thing, and I think kids should get in the habit to put their phones away. And in my family, we have
Hating on President Trump once again, but this time it's from an actor, Christian Bale, who isn't even an American.
Well, it's a shame what's happened with the FBI, but we're going to rebuild the FBI. It'll be bigger and better than ever. But it is very sad when you look at those documents, and how they've done that is really, really disgraceful. And you have a lot of very angry people that are seeing it. It's a very sad thing to watch.
Congressman Ron DeSantis is a key member, Republican member of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, as well as the House Judiciary Committee. He's been all over these big issues the president was talking about. Good morning, Congressman. We appreciate you coming in. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to, let's kind of recap quickly where we are. I think our viewers may be hearing, this Andrew McCabe and, Peter Strzok and the text messages. This is a big week coming up where some of these key players are coming in Monday, Tuesday, testifying behind closed doors. Before we get to potential contempt charges, if they don't answer what you want, what do you want? What do you want to hear from these key players?
Well, remember what the really devastating text message of Strzok said. He said that there was a meeting in Andrew McCabe's office during the campaign with Lisa Page, and Lisa Page sketches out this scenario saying, oh, don't worry about it, Trump can't win, there's no way. And Strzok texts Page after the meeting, says, I wish I could have that confidence, but we, meaning the FBI, can't take the risk of Trump being elected, and we need an insurance policy. So the question is what was the FBI doing to inject itself in the campaign? So what we've been asking for is the genesis of the Russia investigation, particularly this dossier that was funded by the Democratic Party via Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele. How did that come into the FBI's possession? Did the FBI pay Steele for the dossier? And then did the FBI use any of that information in order to get a surveillance warrant on anyone associated with then candidate and later President-elect Trump? Those are all questions that the American people have a right to, but when Christopher Wray testified before the Judiciary Committee 2 weeks ago, he would not answer it. Rod Rosenstein this past week would not answer it. This is the last week where it's really crunch time, and if we're not getting those basic answers, then Congress is going to have to act.
Well, this is what Christopher Wray said when you asked him questions last week. Listen.
Did the FBI pay for a dossier on the president?
Questions about the dossier are something that are better taken up in separate settings.
So you ask a lot of questions, and the right questions. How do you get the actual answers?
Well, we're entitled to the answers, and so Devin Nunes, who's been doing a great job in the Intel Committee, he has made clear, and the Speaker, Paul Ryan, is supporting the effort to say, we get those answers, and if not, we will move contempt against people in the FBI and the Justice Department. I mean, think about it. You have a right to know whether your tax dollars were used to buy a dossier that was used by the Democratic Party against then-candidate Trump. I mean, you just have a right to that. That's not classified. That's your tax dollars at work. And so the question is, why would the FBI just not say, of course we didn't pay for it? They won't say that, so that leads you to believe that they probably did pay for it, and they probably used it.
So you think they're hiding behind classification? They're hiding behind, we can't tell you that?
Well, none of that is classified. I mean, once you get to the surveillance stage where you're actually putting the application in, if there are intelligence sources and methods, that may be something that you wouldn't necessarily disclose to every member of Congress, although Nunes on the Intelligence Committee would absolutely have a right to that. But did you pay for it? Did you use it? How did you start the investigation? None of that is classified.
So why couldn't he go behind closed doors with Sayed Nunes and have that question answered? I mean, I get he's in a hearing. It's an open hearing. Why isn't that happening, or will that happen?
Well, that's what he's trying to get. And he's been trying to do this for weeks and weeks, if not months. And it's been stonewall, stonewall, stonewall the entire time. And you just got to ask yourself, why are they doing that? Right. So look, at the end of the day, this is like pulling teeth. We're going to get the answers. The Strzok text message about needing an insurance policy is so explosive that there's no way they can't give the American people a full accounting on how all this stuff happened during the presidential campaign.
And what about Rod Rosenstein? You mentioned him a couple moments ago. He's a deputy attorney general, essentially in charge of this Russia investigation because of the attorney general recusing himself. And Rosenstein is the man who named Bob Mueller as a special counsel, as you know better than anyone. And when he was pressed, I believe by you and others, he was just on the Hill a few days ago, he was asked about the dossier, which you mentioned a moment ago. Do you know whether or not the FBI paid for it? There's been reports that maybe they spent millions of dollars to fund this dossier against then-candidate Donald Trump. And Congressman, as you know, Rosenstein said, I believe I know the answer, but I'm not going to say. What in the world is going on?
And not only that, he said, look, I'm in negotiations with the Intelligence Committee to maybe provide them that information. And here's the thing. He doesn't get to pick and choose which committees he responds to. The Judiciary Committee has primary oversight over the FBI and the Justice Department. And so that is not his role to be doing that. So, yeah, look. I think I know what the answer, but I'm not going to tell you. Are you kidding me? That is unacceptable. And I think it's answers like that that are walking these guys into potential contempt citation.
And so, Congressman, if the answer to that question turns out to be yes, they paid for it, wouldn't the DO or the FBI, if they paid for it, be in collusion with Russians? Because the Russians were behind that, some of the information in that dossier.
Christopher Steele got information from Russians, government agents, former government agents. I think he paid some of them. We need to find out exactly what was paid. So there was definitely a collusion between Steele, the Russians, Fusion GPS, and the Democrats. And here's the thing. If the answer to either of those questions is yes, they paid for the dossier, or yes, they used it to get surveillance on Trump's associates, then you have evidence that the FBI and Obama's DOJ interjected themselves into the presidential election. Wow. That is a bombshell. That is major news.
That would be.
It will require a huge house cleaning with both of these agencies.
Quick exit question. Would a second special counsel be required?
If there's evidence of criminal activity, though, I'll tell you, Sessions should be able to handle this himself. And in Congress, we should get all of this information. The problem with the special counsel is we won't hear anything for 6 months. The American people want these answers now because I think it goes to the legitimacy of this whole Russia investigation.
Congressman Ron DeSantis, all over this. Important point to make there. People talking about a special counsel. The Justice Department could do this right now. Thanks for coming in.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, Congressman. Turning now to your headlines, thousands more told to get out as a massive wildfire in Southern California burns further out of control. The Thomas Fire bearing down on Santa Barbara County, fueled by strong winds, scorching more than 267,000 acres. The fire is so massive, it can be seen from space. So far, it's responsible for the death of a firefighter and a woman trying to flee. The flames are currently 40% contained. Once winds let up, firefighters hope to turn the tables. A Nevada Democrat is giving up his seat over sexual harassment claims. Congressman Ruben Kihuen says he won't seek re-election after 2 women came forward saying he made unwanted sexual advances towards them. Keenan denies the claims and says he will fully cooperate with the House Ethics Committee, adding he's looking forward to clearing his name. A military...
If he's to play for pro sports team.
Yeah, it just happens all the time. All right, Rick's out there giving us some weather. What's up, Rick?
Hey, guys. Nice crowd out here. Where are you from?
Virginia.
Virginia. What do you think of New York?
It's cool.
It's cool? I think so, too. It's a pretty good place. Take a look at the weather maps as you are waking up this morning. We have a chilly start way up to the north. That cold air mass is going to stay away from us for about the next week, but get ready. There are some big indications that next week that cold air mass is going to make its way in towards the central part of the country. So I think we're going to be seeing a big cool down. Down across the lower 48, though, things looking pretty good. In fact, warming up a lot throughout this week. It's going to be kind of a nice break from this cold air that we've had. Starting off very cold this morning across the northeast, especially across parts of Maine and in towards the Adirondacks. But you get this idea. We have a little bit of rain coming in across the mid-Atlantic, and we're going to be watching the temperatures warm back up above average. Down to the southeast, more rain showers move through, and get ready. Kind of a stormy few days. We desperately need the rain, especially across parts of Arkansas, and the next few days we're going to get a good shot at it. All right, guys, back to you inside.
Rick, that's pretty cool.
Good stuff.
As the kid said, pivotal week ahead for tax reform. That's pretty cool, too. Can Republicans get the votes done by Christmas? Looks like it. Will they deliver a huge gift for the American people? More money in your pocket? Peter Doocy, live in Washington.
Plus, stop the presses. Pope Francis agrees with President Trump about fake news. Father John can't believe it either.